Nigeria, we have a problem. I mean, I'm laughing, but we have a serious problem in Nigeria.
If you knew what you were made of, then we would save the world.
With anti-Black American sentiment. I don't think it's universal, by the way, but I think it's pervasive enough for us to need to address it with a degree of seriousness. I say this because I was shocked actually to speak to some people who I'd classify as family in Nigeria, who I visit very often and who I love dearly. And the subject of America came up because some of these people spent some time in America, and clearly whilst they were there, they were tethers, because I couldn't believe the kind of stuff that I was hearing from them. And it's not the first time. I've got in-laws over here who have relatives who live in the States, and they have equally disparaging views of the native Black population. And it does puzzle me. It's not to say that you're not going to get frustrated or have, you know, negative interactions with people, but it's more the stereotyping that takes place, and also just the general lack of gratitude and empathy that's given to our brothers and sisters across the Atlantic. It doesn't make any sense to me. We have so much to celebrate and also to be appreciative for. I mean, the mere fact that you find yourself in the United States as an African, you owe that to them. You owe that to the civil rights movement. I was even in a bit of an argument on my own. Well, actually, it wasn't my own. It was on an Instagram thread. I was in a bit of an argument because someone from the States asked a question. They was like, yo, England, man, like, who's your equivalent of Rosa Parks and MLK and Malcolm X? And I replied very, very quickly. I said, we don't have an equivalent. And people from England got on my back. Oh, how dare you say that? Oh, we've done these riots and this, that, and the other, and the list, and all of these advocacy organizations that we set up. And it's like, well, be easy. We don't have a civil rights movement in the UK because we never had racism codified into law. Okay, that never existed. There was never a need for civil rights. We never lived under a legal racial apartheid like they did in the United States. We didn't have things like lynchings, and we don't have that backstory here. Yes, we know that England's history has been extensively whitewashed, and that's a video for another time. But in terms of when a majority of our parents came here, or majority of our ancestors came here, it was post America's freedom struggle. And so we benefited from essentially not having that same degree of persecution within this nation to have to deal with. So that's what I mean when I say gratitude. It's kind of like Black people finding themselves anywhere in the diaspora owes a vote of thanks to the Black American population. But anyway, that's enough of me kind of like glazing. let's get into this video, because this guy here, this Nigerian guy, seemed to kind of reflect my sentiments.
Nigerian man, but there are two things that make me truly embarrassed of being Nigerian. The first thing is how white supremacist Nigerians are as a collective. And the second is how very comfortable Nigerians are with the current state of Nigeria, in spite of the fact that shit is fucked up in Nigeria. Now, I will give grace because I understand that we have a long way to go, and it's not easy being a...
And I'm just going to jump on that. First of all, one of the things we have to understand and acknowledge is that Nigerians are very white supremacists. Okay. And now I've noticed that this does change across ethnic lines. So this isn't universal. I'm from the Yoruba. Yoruba are very generally white supremacists. But you'll get other ethnicities. I think Igbo are a little bit more kind of, they're kind of low P with it, because obviously they've had a recent mass unaliving that was done against their people. But they're pretty Black power with it. but they're kind of low P with it. They're very much business oriented, but they're a little bit more about it than, I guess, your average Yoruba. I'm talking generalizations and averages here. Okay. And then you've obviously got your Hausa, who are more Arab, kind of Islamic supremacist. So there's a lot of confusion when it comes to the Nigerian population, but I guess the population that gets most of the exposure in the diaspora would be kind of like that southern population. So a lot of those, Yoruba and assorted others, but majority Yoruba, that find themselves around the globe doing different things. And because of a mixture of religion, the demonization of indigenous culture, a lack of understanding and over reliance on Western education, all of these things have come together to form a concoction of white glaze, which does take place. People are they think that this world's current situation is the result of a meritocracy. And obviously the Bible has told them to believe that, so they think that, everything that's happened is a result of meritocracy. And if we could just be more like the English. And obviously another thing about Nigerians you have to understand is the fatigue. Nigerians are fatigued with corruption. Nigeria has had corrupt leaders for God knows how long now, 60 straight years of just straight up corruption, and a population that has been desperate to see some more honesty, but it's just never materialized. We've had many leaders die in office and so much different things that have taken place in Nigeria that have brought it to this place. But the Nigerian population are very fatigued, and that makes them kind of like feel this desperation where they just don't believe anything good can come from a fellow Nigerian, even though they're very proud to be Nigerian. They love it. They don't think that essentially, native Nigerians have the ability to govern honestly, effectively, and carry out what they're supposed to carry out without essentially defrauding the people. So you have all of these hang-ups and that fatigue the Nigerian people. And one of the, I guess, symptoms of that is this kind of issue of white supremacy that we're talking about. It's real.
Black person in a white supremacist capitalistic world. So I will give grace because we as a Black collective will still have ways to go. However, there are so many things that Nigerians can learn from Black Americans. For example, did you know that once upon a time in the United States of America, Black people were not considered humans. They were considered property. I don't think you understand. Like Black Americans who occupy America today, once upon a time, they were not considered human beings at all.
And this, I'm glad he's mentioning this because, just the respect of history can do so much. And I think that what you have to understand for the average Nigerian person, you go to the household and the elders will normally, I'm not saying this is across the, but this is normally the case. They'll have the news on, and it will either be BBC News 24 or CNN or one of those news channels, one of those news networks. And there's this kind of feeling that watching the Western news makes you intelligent. So they're getting all of this biased, one-sided, anti-Black, anti-African, anti-anything melanated, biased, Eurocentric, god-awful concoction of lies. And they believe that's the news. They believe that's what I need to be informed about this. And this is just the thing. It's very much endemic in the culture for them to be just consuming the Western propaganda and the Western perspectives and to believe that it's the truth. And it's this lack of, a basic grounding of Black people's global history. And I'm not saying they don't know their own history, because a lot of Nigerians do know Nigerian history, but they don't know it to the extent where it needs to be taught as its own thing. And they also have no idea about Black America's history beyond, the basic freedom struggle that they're taught. So they don't have this kind of like basic understanding or appreciation of the fact that not every black person is just in a bad position as a result of bad governance. You know, black people in America haven't had their own governments. Okay, they've tried to set up on multiple occasions their own communities and their own community leadership, and each time they've been met with either mob force or military force, and had those cities, towns, nations flooded, paved over, roads built through them, or just stolen and, you know, reattributed to people who didn't build them. And they've had this happen over and over again. Nigerians, God bless us, we don't have that backstory. We've had corrupt governance. And yes, these are puppet leaders who have been placed there by people more powerful than us and more capable than us of actually placing people in power. But at the same time, I guess there's a little bit more, we got to take the blame for that than you could put on Black Americans for being in any kind of position that they're in.
Oh, just imagine how fucked up that is, that their ancestors built America, yet they were considered less than humans. But guess what they did? They fought back. So in the 1800s, there was a civil war because some people wanted to make sure that black Americans remained properties. And in this civil war, more American soldiers died than any other war that American soldiers have died in combined. Let that sink in. Only because black Americans just wanted to be seen as humans. That's it. Black Americans were not asking for too much. They just wanted a space where they can survive. That's it. They understood that they couldn't go back to Africa because their ties.
And by the way, that's all they've ever wanted. And it's not just something that they've wanted theoretically and they fought for and they've never attained. It's almost like the Matrix. This is something that they've attained over and over and over again. They've fought for it, they've built it, they've created it, and then they've had it taken away from them. And this has just happened, you know, like I said, the dominant ruling class doesn't play this game fairly. They've cheated, and black Americans have had to live in the midst of this belligerent force that continually attacks and cheats and breaks down and steals and appropriates from them, extracts from their community, you know, like a parasite, like a leech, every time they build and develop themselves. It's a history that I think is at least worth understanding and appreciating before you condemn it. At the moment, actually, there's a guy called Frank Zanu who I'm actually really keen to have a kind of a one-to-one debate with, because he's out there spreading a lot of anti-black African rhetoric and talking about the fact that black Americans have no culture, which I'm not going to go into in this video. I'll do that on a separate video, but it's the most laughable gaslight I've ever heard. And these are the kind of ignorant views that I think a little bit of education can normally solve these problems. So normally people just need to be informed about patterns of history. And sometimes people look through the world through the lens of their own experiences. And that, I think that Nigerians are very guilty of that, at least the ones who make these condemning statements towards black Americans. They look at the corruption of their own nation. They look at the uselessness of the leadership and the parliamentary powers that have been at play in a nation like Nigeria for the past 60 years, and how they've just successfully and consistently screwed the populace over without any form of regard. And they think, oh, well, everywhere you see black failure or black people struggling, it must be the result of the same kind of selfishness and corruption. And it isn't always the case. Sometimes some people have actually had a greater success at building it within that time span, but I've had it taken away from them. So it's just worth having that kind of empathy.
is already broken. They couldn't go anywhere else because they don't know anywhere else but America. America is all they know. And in America, white still has power. They were not trying to fight or drag that power with white. They just wanted a safe space for them to raise their children and just do their own thing. However, with Nigerians do not fight the fuck shit in Nigeria because Nigerians believe that the white man's ice is colder. The average Nigerian does not believe in Nigeria, even though we like to pretend that we are proud to be Nigerian. Giant of Africa, all kinds of foo-foo shit. The average Nigerian is looking to leave Nigeria by fire, by force, to go to America, to go to Canada, to go to UK. Why is the average Nigerian trying to run to America?
And I'd agree and disagree because I know people, a lot of Nigerians love Nigeria, don't want to be anywhere else, but they also hate Nigeria. It's like the most bizarre dichotomy. Because Nigeria is the most frustrating place to live in. Everything is there. When you think about it on just a very basic level, it's almost like a paradise. And Nigerian people are some of the best people to be around in terms of their spirit, the energy that's there. It's not really matched anywhere else. So you have this kind of nation that has so much latent potential, but then has astounding, ridiculous uselessness and corruption that takes place. You know, when you're talking about we can't even get steady power in 2025, power cuts, and Lord, it's like you almost like your mind boggles, like this is still happening. Why is this still happening? And so what he's saying is very true. Like a lot of Nigerians just get fed up and they just want to get the hell out of the nation, but it's not because they don't love Nigeria and they don't love Nigerians. It's because as a nation, it is very much a functioning mess. And it's due to the corruption. And that corruption just makes you, it starts, I mean, I don't live there, but I know for a fact it starts to wear on you. You start to believe, can any good come out of black people? So when you hear these kind of fatigued Africans making really, derogatory statements about, black Americans, for instance, a lot of that is projection. A lot of that is just a projection of what they've had to endure. So it's really interesting.
To enjoy the benefits that black American ancestors have fought and died for you, so that your black ass from Nigeria can be considered a human being, so that your children born on American soil will be considered American citizens with equal rights to whites, because you do not truly believe in Nigeria. That is the power of the audacity that came from them fighting back. Imagine if all Nigerians, both home and abroad, stopped looking at immigration as the solution and
just to be clear, respect the hustle. He's making it very, very clear there. If you're gonna bring, like he said, your long black ass to the States, don't get there and don't you dare start insulting the very people whose ancestors paved the way for you to be able to be there. It's like if there's one thing that the current president of the States, Trump, and the movements of ICE kicking out all the immigrants. I think the latest one is the kind of whole Somali thing. So a lot of the Somalians are getting their wake-up call of what it means when you turn around and you disparage the black community, or you try and separate yourself from the black community, or you try and look down upon the black community. You realize we don't have nothing but black civil rights separating us from being treated like animals here. And that's what the Mexicans found out. That's what a lot of these Latinos are finding out. And that's what the Somalis are finding out. And that's what everybody who's not black are finding out. Those rights that you are, hanging your hat upon and being like, so using those same rights that you've been given by the blacks, to stay in that nation, to be there, to be able to work, to be able to feed yourself, to be able to have an opportunity in a nation like America, they're very tenuous. And when you pull out that thread of, tearing down the black community, you pull out the thread of those very same rights, and you realize that that perspective will come back to bite you in the ass, because when those rights are removed, what the hell are you doing here? ICE get these damn immigrants out, because you have to understand white supremacy doesn't have any friends. Okay, it doesn't have any friends. They're not going to turn around and go, get rid of those black Americans. We're going to replace them with the Nigerians. Hell no. Hell no. That is not going to happen. So you need to start realizing where your bread is buttered.
Start fighting for what is truly ours in our home country with the exact same audacity or more. Hey, Fada, just imagine what Nigeria would look like for us and our children yet to be born. 30 December, Ndara.
That's the end. And he kind of like closed off on talking about Dirty December. But it's true, you know, Africans, or Nigerians, I should say, you know, very, very quick to flee. And I can't complain because, no, my mum is a immigrant. I was born in the UK because my mum left when she was very, very young. And it was a slightly different situation when she left. It was, you know, a long, long time ago now. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not going to turn around and condemn anyone for leaving. But the point is, if you are going to be one of those that leave, don't arrive wherever it is you find yourself at as a result of leaving your home nation, and then disparage that very community that is responsible for you being able to have that freedom of movement. Okay, it's just a little bit of common courtesy. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of react to this video. I saw it and I was like, yeah, I need to react to this because this is how I feel. This is how I feel as an African. It might seem like I'm sitting here kind of just like glazing Americans, but I'm not. I'm just kind of aware of history. Like we need to, like, to me, like it doesn't to me it doesn't make a difference if I'm glazing Americans, Caribbeans, Nigerians, Angolans, Andaman Islanders, Polynesians, Melanesians. We've all had to overcome different versions of the same struggle, which is white supremacy, which looks down upon those people it classifies as black people. And so I'm going to try my best to understand the struggle, your version of the struggle, whatever that is. And it just so happens to be that the Black American version of the struggle is the one that we as black people globally should look at with the most admiration. And yet this new wave seems to be, let's take every opportunity to take shots at what is happening in America right now, even though they're under some of the worst apartheid conditions globally right now in 2025. You know, what they're having to endure is despicable, and they need we as black people in the diaspora to have their back. But anyway, that's it. Just wanted to have a quick layout. I'm trying to keep them a bit shorter. So this one is looking like it's going to be about 20 minutes, which is pretty cool. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you in the next one. Peace.
If you knew what you